Welcome in, high school football fans. It is week 9. Week 9 of the high school football season. Drew Sarachman, Jim Ballard coming to you from the Stark Media Team studios in downtown Massillon for this week's edition of High School Football Rewind. A lot of great games last week in the area. You know, we cover 3 as always. We're going to start this week with the EBC. Marlington, 31-0 winners over Minerva. The Dukes get their first win of the season. Big game for Bo Himmelheber. Bo Himmelheber. That's
say that one 10 times.
I know. I've had to write it down a couple times, but big game for him. 165 total yards, 3 touchdowns. Also, congrats to Marlington head coach Phil Morrow in his first year at Marlington, but gained his 200th career victory as a head coach. So congrats to him.
Impressive. I mean, do the math on that.
200.
That'd be 20 seasons winning 10 games.
He's
a long time.
He's coached at a variety of different places. You know, always has his teams competitive. Obviously struggling in his first year at Marlington.
He'll right the ship though.
We'll see how things go moving forward. Carrollton with kind of a surprise victory. Got their butts kicked the week before by Alliance. Come back, beat Salem 39-34. Senior Chase Olstrom, another huge game on the ground, and the senior has now surpassed 5,000 career rushing yards. Still got some games left to add to that total. He may, when it's all said and done, with a little playoff run, he may be, north of 5,500. So congrats to him. Over at Mountain Union, it was West Branch. They scored late to defeat Alliance 42-35. Sam Berkwin and Jeff Shreve were on that game on 106.9. And Jim, talk about that game a little bit.
Yeah, it was back and forth. It was a showdown of 2 big-time quarterbacks in Zerbrug and Drew DeShields. Weather played a part in that ball game. It was a little wet, a little bit rainy. Had to deal with the elements a little bit. Drew DeShields had another outstanding game. He did throw his first interception. I believe he's 27-1 now.
Yeah,
not a bad ratio to say the least. But it was Alliance that turned it over more than West Branch did, which really cost them the game. They had 2 interceptions. They also fumbled 1 time, and when you lose a turnover battle, as a coach, you're going to lose probably 90% of your games. It was back and forth, but it was Mullinex with a 9-yard run with less than 15 seconds. And the crazy thing about that, a little Mountain Union magic, Pops was a hell of a baseball player at Mountain Union. Mullinex got the win on a great play call in the last 15 or so seconds, and it was just put West Branch over Alliance in a hell of a ball game. It was back and forth all game.
So West Branch takes sole possession of the lead atop the EBC. They've got a big game still with Salem coming up in the next couple of weeks, but it looks like they're going to hold on and they're going to take it. But we'll see what happens there. Canton Central Catholic went down on the river and beat East Liverpool 49-6. They've won their 3rd straight game. They seem to be peaking at the right time with the playoffs coming. But first, we're not sure what's going to happen in Week 10 with Aquinas, if Aquinas is going to have enough players to play. But this week, they've got a huge matchup with Jackson. Sam Berkwin and Jeff Shreve will have that game for you on Rock 106.9 and the iHeartMedia app. So if you want to keep track of Jackson and Central, that's where you want to do it. Talk about that Jackson Central matchup, Jim.
It's a rivalry game because there's so many kids that live in the Jackson School District that go to Canton Central Catholic. So there's kind of that, animosity a little bit about the 2 schools. Canton Central Catholic, as you said, has won 3 straight ball games, playing extremely well. Jack Talkington is getting healthy. That was one of those games last week that Canton Central Catholic really needed because it was one of those games where they could rest their starters, get them out early, put the ball cap on halftime, running clock. They've had a little bit of injuries. Jack Talkington's playing both sides of the ball, as we keep talking about each week. Just an absolute football player. I spent some time with Jack, and we broke down Liverpool before they played them. Man, they're just not good.
They're not what they were. I mean, that community is on hard times. I think the last time that they were really successful, Mark Asher was there, like in 2011. 2010.
I spent some
Since
time
then,
up there
you know.
with about 5 years ago working with one of their quarterbacks. I believe it's been now. Coach Ludwig, another Mount Union guy, was the head coach there. He was kind of let go after last season. They hired a new coach. They fired him halfway through the season. The athletic director took over. So, you know, tough times at East Liverpool, but a great win for Canton Central Catholic. And going into this week, being so hot with 3 straight wins going into Jackson, I'm excited selfishly for my Ballard Quarterback Academy guys. Jack is a guy that I've worked with for a long time. And if you listened to TJ and I and Mark Milano's broadcast last Friday with Jackson and McKinley, enter the new era of the Super Frosh, and that was Lucas Eckerman. He had a tremendous ball game in a losing effort.
He was 16 and 19 passing, something like that.
16 for 19 with 2 drops.
It's
with
pretty
the ball
efficient.
right here. Yeah, he was extremely efficient. You know, sometimes some of the completions that he had was because they were playing prevent at the end of the game and before half. But the bottom line was, the thing that really impressed me was his ability to navigate and command the huddle. You know, he's a 14-year-old kid. I hate to keep saying that, but at the end of the day, he's 14.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was impressed with how he would lean into the line of scrimmage and make sure that everybody was set, hearing everything that he was saying. And then he'd look out to the wide receivers, and then he just calmly took the snap. He made great decisions all night long. The one thing that happened with Lattarullo started once again, who's been the starter for Jackson, I believe, for 6-7 games now. They went with the 2 series to 1 series like they did against Glen Oak last week, which was very efficient for him. Lat got the first 2 series, didn't really do anything. They put Lucas in. He immediately took the ball down the field and they scored. He had a really nice throw and a wheel route up the sideline. He used his legs. But for him to, and then they put Lattarullo back in. Lattarullo proceeds to throw a pick 6. And as Coach Rohr said in the paper, they decided to go with the hot hand after they put Lucas in after the interception. He led him down the field again for another 2-minute drive that put points on the board. And he played the second half. He did have a strip sack fumble. Protection broke down a little bit. And the thing was, I wanted to see a couple things. If he did get an opportunity to play an extended period of time, how's he going to handle it? Which, check that box. And then after he faced some adversity, after a turnover happened, backed up in his own territory, you know, after you have that, how are you going to bounce back? How are you going to respond? Are you know, is he going to get timid? Is he going to, kind of shy away from the moment? He did it all. He ended up competing till the end of the game. They put more points on the board, and I believe that you'll see Lucas Eckerman make his first start this weekend at Jackson. It's going to be a great ball game.
Yeah, in talking about that game, obviously Central's playing well. Defense is starting to play better, but they have been playing some smaller schools. Now they get back to a bigger school. I really think with the things going on at quarterback there at Jackson, that Jackson's going to run the ball 50 times. So, if Central wants to win this game and go, into that last part of their season, they're going to have to find a way to stop Jackson's run because if I'm Jackson, I'm going to line it up, take the pressure off whoever's that quarterback and just run the ball.
Davide, and he had another monster game last week. Not monster game, but he had a nice run. McKinley did a pretty good job of containing him. I believe he finished with about 132 yards or so, but if you take the one run out, I believe it was 52, they held him to like 80 yards rushing. So, McKinley's defense did a good job of containing him, but I agree with you, Drew. I think they're going to line up in big personnel. They're going to run Davide, and you're going to see Lucas Eckerman do more with his legs this week with his zone read. His speed is something that jumps off the page, and that's one thing you're waiting to see because I've seen him play so many freshman games, and then he lines up against McKinley, who was one of the fastest defenses that he's going to face this season, and he didn't look out of place at all.
Yeah, so the other Catholic school in Stark County, St. Thomas Aquinas, they had canceled their game due to lack of players against Warren JFK. I just received a text from St. Thomas Aquinas Athletic Director Nick Stanek. The plan is to play this week against Mogador. So they must have gotten some kids healthy. We'll see what happens. Tall task playing a tough Mogador team. And then obviously week 10, the big matchup against Canton Central Catholic. We'll move on to the Massillon Tigers. They continue to roll. 42-7 win over Canisius, New York. Canisius, a team that beat Massillon a few years back. Massillon beat them in a close game last year. It was 28-0 at the half, And the Tigers now get some rest Friday night. Well, the varsity Tigers do. They're going to play a junior varsity game Friday night under the lights. Would be cool for those kids. But then next week, week 10, big matchup with McKinley.
The granddaddy of them all in Stark County, I guess you could say, right?
Yep. War of 1894. So, speaking of that Massillon-McKinley game, we've got a big announcement for you. You know, the game's over at Paul Brown Tiger Stadium this year. There's going to be limited options to watch this game on TV. So what we're going to do for you at Stark Media, if you are, closer to Canton, if you don't want to make the trip out to Massillon, we're going to do a pregame show and watch party at Centennial Plaza, downtown Canton, brought to you and sponsored by Jersey Sports Bar and Grill down there. We'll be starting the broadcast at 10 a.m. at Centennial Plaza. We'll have coaches from around the area, players from around the area coming in on the pregame show. About a half hour before the game, we will preview that Massillon-McKinley show, and then you will be able to watch the show on the big screen down at Centennial Plaza. If you haven't gotten down there yet, it's absolutely beautiful. They have great, they're doing a ton of great events there every week. It looks like the weather's going to be nice. Next week, looking out, might be about 50 degrees, sunny skies. So one of your last chances to enjoy the outdoors of this fall, and look for our social media to have more info on that. When we get back, we have an exclusive interview with the Massillon Tigers head football coach, Nate Moore.
McNeil & Sons Tree Service serves the greater Northeast Ohio area by keeping your property clear all year round. Do you have trees that have stretched too close to your home? A rotted tree that has to go? Or perhaps even storm damage? No job is too big or small for McNeil & Sons. We specialize in large tree removal, storm damage, stump grinding, land clearing, and more. McNeil & Sons Tree Service is fully licensed and insured, so contact us today at 330-606-1126 for all your tree care needs, or visit us online at mcneiltree.com to schedule your free quote. The professionals at McNeil & Sons can inform you of your tree health and give you a risk assessment to keep your family protected. So call today, 330-606-1126. McNeil & Sons Tree Service, a company you can depend on with family you can trust.
All right, we're back here on High School Football Rewind. Drew Sarachman, Jim Ballard. We're joined by head coach of the Massillon Tigers, Nate Moore. Appreciate you taking the time to do this. I know you're really busy. Luckily, we caught you on a week that you don't have a varsity game Friday night, but it's cool you guys are showcasing the JVs Friday night at Paul Brown Tiger Stadium. You're in your 8th season as the head coach at Massillon. Does it feel like it's been that long?
Some days it feels like longer, and some days it feels like we just got here. So it can be a mixed bag depending on the situation.
Yeah. So with that said, in 8 years, program's had a lot of success. You've really focused on the tradition of the program and built on that. But when that happens, when you guys have that type of success, a lot of times what you see is people from your staff moving on to other places. You have success, it's tough to keep guys on. It seems like you've really done a good job of keeping your staff intact. And can you talk about that and talk about how they've improved and grown over the years?
Yeah, it's continuity on our staff has been key for our success over the last 8 years. We've had the same coordinators, I think, for the last 6 years, and co-coordinators of that. So Spencer Lino and Craig McConnell are co-coordinators on defense, and John Mazer and Jared Trox are co-coordinators on offense. And yeah, the continuity has been key. We're not having to figure out each other, every couple of years or every year or whatnot. Like everybody understands the expectations. Everything's been on a distinctly forward trajectory, with all of our offensive defensive scheme, because of that. So that's been huge. And why is that? This is a really special place. And I think everybody on our staff realizes that. B, we've got a lot of guys on staff that are Massillon Tigers, and so this is where they want to be forever. Guys that played here, went to school here at Washington High School. And see, I don't know. I try to handle all the BS and let those guys just coach. And I want those guys to be successful. I want them to have the resources and the opportunities to do what they want to do and need to do with us offensively, defensively. And I try to handle all the other logistical things that can happen, or personnel issues or whatever, and let those guys coach, and they're really good at it.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you have two offensive coordinators, as you talked about. One of them is John Mazur, who's been here for 7 years. The other is Jarrett Troxler, who's been here for 5 years. A couple questions. How do you come up with who the game plan offensively, number one, and number two, who calls the plays during the course of the game?
Yeah, so Coach Troxler is the play caller, but the formulating the game plan, it's really an effort of within our entire offensive staff. I think we have two great rooms, both our defensive room and our offensive room. No egos. Everybody's allowed to put forth ideas, but everybody else understands that this better be an idea that's been worked through, and it's sound. It gives us an opportunity to win. All those things, like it better pass the muster. But everybody's okay. Bringing those things forward, and when it comes down to it, our coordinators set the direction that we're headed. But it's a group effort. Kale Miller's our receiver coach. He does a great job. He's highly involved in that. We're able to bring on Alex Wood.
What a great addition with his experience in the NFL,
yeah,
the guys that he has coached.
No doubt. But he's as humble a guy as you would ever meet.
He's a great guy.
But he's been great to have in the room, and Chip Robinson and Chris Sproul and Travis McGuire coming on this year. I don't want to leave anybody out, but it's really a group effort. It really is.
It's interesting, and you talked about a lot of the guys that have played here. They understand it. But the way that you hired Coach Troxler is a little bit different. You want to talk about that story and how he came to be at Massillon?
Yeah. Jarrett Troxler's been just a phenomenal addition, since day one. And what happened was we lost our offensive coordinator and quarterback coach after the 2016 season, and so especially John Mazur at the time and I, sat down going through resumes and whatnot and looking for who might be our guy to replace Brett Cooper, who took a head coaching job out in Indiana. And we're doing interviews actually over in his gym over at Gorell Elementary School, and we're doing some phone interviews, and we get to Trox, and we start the interview, and we're like 5 minutes into the interview, and I think either I hit mute or John hits mute, and we both look at each other. We're both like, this is our guy.
And where did he come from?
He was at Thompson High School in South Georgia, which is a big time program. They just lost in the state finals that year, and Jarrett was their offensive coordinator. And thank you, Mo Troxler, Jarrett's wife, because she is from Northeast Ohio, and they were living in Georgia, obviously. And I think she'd been pulling for several years to get back home, and Jarrett was looking, Jarrett and Mo, both of them looking for the right move, and so a lot of stars lined up, and so we got a great play caller with us from South Georgia.
So the first few weeks of the season, actually really more the preseason and week one, there was some improvement that needed to be made on the offensive and defensive line. Over the past couple weeks, the growth that those guys have shown up front has been tremendous. I've had the opportunity to see, a few games on TV and film and those types of things. Can you talk about the growth of that group and maybe some guys, obviously everyone knows about, more, but, some of the other guys that are stepping up in those groups?
Yeah, our offensive, defensive lines have both gotten better every week, and I don't think either one of them really had a bad performance week one. But they definitely a steady improvement. We were returning quite a bit in the front seven, but we're very new on the offensive line. We were much more new at least, and it's been a steady progression. On the offensive line also, we've settled in on a lineup that now I think for the past 5 weeks it's been the same lineup, something like that, which has been key. And on the offensive line, a lot of that credit goes to John Mazer. I think he's phenomenal. I think he's as good as there is in the state of Ohio at developing guys, because we're not huge. We're very average sized, I would say, for a high school offensive line. But our kids are very technically sound.
Physical.
And our kids absolutely get after it. So they're punching above their weight in some of the games we play, but they don't back down from anybody. They love going out there and getting after it. And we are very athletic. Probably the most athletic group that we've had. And, some guys stand out like Evan Sergo's our left tackle, and people probably look at the roster and see he's turned 25 pounds, which he's probably not even that anymore, and think, probably gonna wear this kid out. But Evan Sergo just gets after it. He's really, really strong, especially in the lower half, and really athletic. And so he's had a great year. He had a great game week 5. So he's playing really, really well. We've got a sophomore, Mike Looney, at left guard, who we think is going to be really, really good. And he had some sophomore struggles early, but he's now, at this point of the season, Drew, you're not a sophomore anymore. That's kind of over. And then Mike Mercurio's our right guard. He's the lone senior in the group. And he's just kind of a lunch pail guy, and not overly big, not overly athletic maybe, but he gets after it, gets off the ball, he doesn't quit. He's a 4-quarter guy. Brady Jones is our center now, and he does have some length. He's 6'2", 6'3", and athletic. He can really move. And our right tackle, Sam Snodgrass, is a returning starter for us from last year. Played center for us last year. Moves out to right tackle. As a group, they've really gelled. They've really come together. They're playing good football. And our defensive line, we returned Chase Bond, we returned Marcus Moore, we returned Mike Wright, from the previous season. So we had some starters coming back. Malachi Card gets added to the group, who we thought a lot of last year when he was a sophomore. And he's played he's had a great season at end. He's been our starting end all year. Played really well, productive tackles for loss and sacks, and then Marcus Moore is who he is. He's just so big and physical and strong. He plays a 3-tech most of the time, and Mike Wright's our nose, and he's really special. He's just with his quickness off the ball and his power. Very, very productive. And so those guys, and then you add Chase Bond to the group, so we really have 4 guys that we feel really good about that we can rotate through those 3 positions. It's been you have to win up front.
Absolutely.
Especially against good teams you play, you have to win up front, or you have to at least be able to go, punch for punch.
For sure.
And so it's been good to see those guys get better.
Yeah. Talk about winning up front. TJ and myself and Mark Milano did the Austintown Fitch game. All you did was punch them in the mouth for 4-0-6 against the 6-0 team. Was awful impressive. Yeah. Just decided from beginning whistle till the end. we're going to put our hand in the ground and we're going to get white knuckled and we're just going to pound you and beat you up. It was impressive to watch that group do what they did against that team and totally take a guy that had 33 D1 offers out of the game. I'm not even sure if we even called his name a couple times, if at all.
Yeah, our kids showed up that night. You know, played really well and beat a really good Austin Town Fitch team. That's a really good team.
They got dudes.
Yeah,
I think they're well coached too.
Yeah, Coach Parker does a great job.
He does a nice job. He's a Fitch guy, and he's really trying to push the envelope on a lot of things. I think that staff does a good job.
So we live in a society nowadays that's becoming softer and softer. Not sure if you heard about it last week. Obviously, you're preparing for a game. So, you know, I had coached in Hoban before. Came out that St. Vincent St. Mary is not renewing their rivalry games anymore with Hoban. How tough has it become, you know, as a perennial successful program to schedule nowadays?
Yeah, I mean it's been really tough. It's been really tough, and I think it has gotten tougher over the last several years as we've, you know, really done well. But it always seems to find a way to work itself out. You know, I guess you may say other than this year we did end up with a whole week 9. There was a trip that we could have taken that I just didn't, you know, to do that week 9.
The week before.
Yeah.
It's too much.
Yeah. Just wasn't interested in that. So technically we could have filled it. But yeah, it is getting harder and harder. I find that, you know, with the setup that we have with our facilities, and you know, a lot of times the teams that come in, we set them up with a tour of the Hall of Fame and things like that, and we're able to take care of them pretty good. That you just got to find the right team. And the right team is that's thirsty for a challenge, and a coaching staff and administrators that support the coach and wanted to do something really, really cool for his kids. You know, that's kind of what happened with the Middletown team from Delaware, and that was a good football team.
Yeah, they're talented.
They were up 2 scores on us to start that game. Yeah, but you know that they're the best team in Delaware. They're looking for the challenge. You know, it's a coach that wants to push the envelope and wants to do something great for his kids. So, you know, those teams are out there. You've got to cast a wide net. But yeah, I mean, it can be. You have to send a lot of emails.
Yeah, I get it.
It can be tedious. I don't know. It's hard.
Yeah. So, you know, with that said, you guys, Hoban, Ignatius, Eds, Harding, you know, maybe a team like that. Would you ever entertain the conversation of like saying like, hey, you know, as all those schools, you know, have the ability to host big crowds. I know Hoban's, you know, making additions to their stadium. Would you ever consider like say, hey, football only, let's get something together that we all play each other each year, make it easier to schedule?
I think there's a little bit of that going on already. Not completely. There's a little bit of that going on already. I mean, I think from our standpoint, I mean, we would always be interested in sitting down and talking about things.
Yeah.
You know, there's definitely no harm in that. You know, there was a thing, maybe 50 years ago, 60 years ago, called the All-American Conference, the original All-American Conference, that basically that happened, and the best football in the state of Ohio was here in Northeast Ohio, and all the schools that at that time were in the running, you know, for the mostly the top teams in the state, at least in this area, got together and said, let's form a league. It was football only. It lasted for I think about 20 years, something like that. But it was us, Kent McKinley, Warren Harding, Niles McKinley, Steubenville, Alliance.
Yep.
I think that's it. But yeah. So those teams played a round robin, and a bunch of those years that the state champion came out of that league, and in part because, you know, those teams all played each other. So if you're a voter, you had a good idea of who the champion was at that point.
Well, and now with 16 teams getting into the playoffs, it just makes sense to battle test yourself, right? I mean, obviously you want home games and stuff like that, but
Yeah, relative to your earlier question about scheduling too, like I anticipated that at that point people would be knocking down our door and knocking down the door of Ignatius and Eds to play, because the mantra before was, well, you play a team like that and you get beat and then you don't make the playoffs. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And there was something to that, But now,
Everybody gets
like let's say you're a team in Division I, Region 1, and you got to go play Eds and Ignatius anyways, and you may be playing in the first round, and you go your entire season without playing a team of that caliber. That's not going to go good for you.
Get shell-shocked.
It's not going to go good for you. So, I would think, and I thought that scheduling would get a lot easier, and it didn't at all. It didn't at all. I thought those teams would be knocking down our door to play.
yeah. So I want to touch on this. A few weeks back, the Canton Rep wrote an article, which in my opinion was BS. They just did it was an attempt to gain readers. With all the success of Massillon football and the expectations around here, it seems that sometimes outsiders forget that these are still high school kids. These are not pro players. Does that frustrate you sometimes?
I would say I appreciate the question, but I'm going to have to make no comment on that.
Cool. Got it. So like we said before, 8th season. As of last week, you've coached more games as the head coach at Massillon than anyone. And you are now 2 wins away from passing the great Paul Brown as the all-time wins leader. Have you had the opportunity to think about that, and what would that mean to you and your family?
We're working really hard on this JV game we've got coming up Friday against this Canadian prep team. It's a big task for our guys. It's essentially a JV game, but all hands are on deck on that, and everybody's completely focused on that game Friday.
Gotcha.
We walk in your office, we see the jerseys of the players. What a great weekend, not only for your team, but the kids that have played here, that have gone on to college. I was watching the Monday night game last night, saw Thayer Mumford get a nice burn, get some reps in the first quarter. Caden Woolard, what he's doing in Miami, Ohio, block punt, beat Northwestern.
Yeah, big time.
Austin Brawley making his first start at OU. And of course, Terrence Moore at Pitt. How many guys do you have that are now playing in college football since you've been here, or have played ballpark? I don't know if you know the exact number, but how many players do you have currently playing? Probably an easier question to answer.
I don't have that exact number either. I mean, there's a bunch. We got several guys at Ashton. We have several guys at Walsh.
Kent.
Kent. So hard to say. It makes you really, really proud to see those guys out there.
It speaks volumes. Drew was talking about the wins and losses, where you're at as far as that goes.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing that I love, and obviously that I'm a personal quarterback coach, the way that you're coaching your kids, your staff included, obviously, what you guys are doing is translating to the next level.
Sure.
That's, to me, is one of the most impressive things about what you guys are doing here. Kids that play here, some programs they play in high school and then they go to college and you never hear from them.
Right.
Not here. The things that you guys are doing has been just awesome. Some of the things that are a little bit different that I've noticed that you guys have done since you've taken over the program, and I thought and we've talked about this in the previous years, you just basically saying, you know what, if you want to recruit our kids are available these days. I haven't heard of any other high schools that have said and been able to, number one, set it, but be able to command coaches that come into your building. When did you start doing, basically Massillon only camps for coaches for exposure?
Yeah, the showcase. So I want to say it's been 5 years. That may be wrong. I want to say it's been probably 5 years. It started. I think it was the 2018 season, the spring before that. So we had So it would have been the spring of 2017. And we had a really strong class of guys coming back for that next season. And it just seemed like there was a need for that from us. There's some things that you can do with that are within the rules, both NCAA and OHSAA. And the summer camps are great, but the problem is everybody wants to go to their camp, right?
And there's not enough time for kids
Yeah,
to go to
so-
Miami, to
yeah.
OU.
It
to-
gets expensive.
100%. So you're a Division I kid. Everybody's recruiting you and wants you to come to their camp. You can't go to everybody's camp. It just like you said, it's expensive. There's just not enough time in the summer to do all those things. And so I wanted to provide a way for our kids to essentially go to all of those camps, or at least narrow it down. So then, okay, I'm gonna go camp at the places that have offered me, right? Because I know that they're actually really interested. I don't want to waste my time just going to every camp out there trying to figure out who really wants me. So let's bring everybody here, let them watch our kids work out here, and then 2 weeks after that, if somebody's interested in you or not, right? Because have they offered you or have they not? If they haven't offered you, then they're not interested. It's just the way it works. And so we had a showcase here that spring with that class. They had a bunch of offers come out of it. It was great, and have been doing it ever since. And it's just it's an opportunity for our kids to work out in front of it's been anywhere between 30 and 35 Division I coaches, and probably about the same with the lower levels with Division II and Division III. And so there's something there for everybody. We use it as our spring test with the 40 the Pro Shuttle. So it's a big deal. Big day for us, the kids to get jacked up for it, and there's been a lot of good coming out.
I had a chance to work the camp with you guys this Tuesdays,
Right.
which I really appreciated, being able to spend some more time with your kids. Speaking of kids, how's Eli and your daughter doing?
Yeah.
I had a chance to spend a lot of time with Eli in the off season with
Yeah.
Ballard Quarterback Academy, and when we talked, it's like, well, I don't think he's going to be a quarterback, but I just want him to keep doing something and
Yeah.
keep learning about the game and increasing his football IQ. How are the kids doing?
Yeah, really good. Ella's in 6th grade, and she's getting heavily involved in running and basketball, and I'm trying to get her into volleyball. I think she's going to be tall. And Eli's a freshman, and so he's knee deep in his freshman season right now. They just had a big win last week against Ignatius. They've got Avon, and then their rivalry game the following week. And he's having a great time. He's playing outside linebacker and some tight end. And he is their backup quarterback. I think the quarterback work that he did was great. Whether he ends up being a quarterback or not, he learned a lot and appreciated it.
I appreciate the opportunity, and
It was great.
man, I'll tell you what, I saw him, I believe, I think it was in the fall or then the spring, and there was about a 4-month window that had passed, and all of a sudden, he grew 4 or 5 inches.
He's closing in on 6'3". He's gonna be big.
He had unbelievable growth spurt, and it was a lot of fun working with him. And again, appreciate the opportunity to work with your kids and continued success. And one more thing, you talk about the wins, or we're talking about the wins and the things that you do off the field, or for your kids to get more exposure. But the one thing that you also did different that I haven't seen other people was you started implementing the team ACT program. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that was something that once again started around the same time, and we had some guys that had a shot at the scholarship level that didn't have the ACT score to match up with it, and so what are you gonna do, right? You gotta figure something out, and so it started with just those guys, and so my wife Becca has been highly involved in that because I don't know that anybody wants to be prepping them on the ACT, but she's pretty good at it. And so working with those guys individually to try to get their ACT score increased, and so we did it like that first, I guess, spring and summer, and going into the next year, I just thought, once you're doing it, what's the difference between doing it with 5 kids or doing it with 100 kids? You're already preparing the stuff. You just make more copies or whatnot, and talk to a bigger group. And then we got a chance to impact everybody because not everybody's going to college to play football, maybe, but hopefully most of them are going to college. And if you're going to college, a better ACT score is going to help you. Whether it's getting into the school you want to get into or academic scholarships, whatever. So we decided to do it for everybody, and it's been 4 or 5 years now we've been doing that, and it's been really good. We've seen some great growth out of the ACT scores from some of our guys. Not me, that's all Becca taking care of that. So.
And speaking of your wife, Becca, on Thursday mornings at 9 a.m., her and Scott Ryan have their Tiger Talk show that you've been a part of. Gives a lot of your players some exposure to the community, and kind of get a fan's perspective with her and Scott, on the games and stuff. So that's been pretty cool. So check that out, Tiger Talk. Check them out on YouTube. Really appreciate your time. Know you're a busy guy. We wanted to get you this week before all the madness of next week happens. And we wish you nothing but luck, the rest of the season. And that'll do it for us on High School Football Rewind for this segment. And we'll have a word from our sponsors and be right back.
At C.H. Vallis & Associates, we've been proudly serving the greater Stark County community for over 78 years. Locally owned, we cover your home, auto, business, and life insurance along with your group benefits. Our partnership with auto owners has allowed us to span not only Ohio, but throughout the entire country. Did you know that Auto Owners, an A++ rated company by AM Best and a Fortune 500 company, has ranked C.H. Vallis & Associates a top 10 insurance agency in the state of Ohio? From your basic home and auto needs to insuring some of the largest companies in America, there's a reason people choose C.H. Vallis & Associates and Auto Owners. Our dedication and passion for our clients and their coverage is part of our commitment to excellence. For all your insurance coverage needs, there's only one call to make, and that's C.H. Vallis & Associates, located at 1302 South Main Street in North Canton. Contact us at 330-494-2776 today and see the difference in customer satisfaction.
All right, we are back here on High School Football Rewind. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Thank you to Coach Nate Moore for that interview.
Great interview.
Great interview. Did a great job. He does such a good job over there. And obviously I asked him the question about that article in Canton Rep, and we talked about it weeks ago. When you have a program like they have over there, people want to be a part of it. And that's the bottom line.
It is, and it's one of those things where once you get to the top, there's so many people that can't wait to knock you down, and the things that he's done. And I was so glad that we were able to get that much time with him, because there's so many questions that you wanted to ask. But the 2 questions that I asked that were, to me, one of the things that separates what he's doing was the fact that he's bringing more college coaches in to see his kids on his days, on his time.
Yep.
So he's eliminating all the as you said, the travel for those kids, the
expense,
the cost and expense to go to each camp, and then the ACT stuff. I mean, that's the big picture what you're doing. And then I say this all the time. We use this game to get us to college, to get us a better job and do a little bit better than our parents. And the ACT prep for those kids is a huge thing, because so many kids get lost in the shuffle because their grades just aren't high enough and their scores aren't high enough. So
yep. Yeah.
Great interview.
He's doing a great job, and like I mentioned, he's 2 wins away from being the all-time winner at Massillon as a head coach.
I thought it was cool that he really didn't want to answer the question.
Yeah, he's focusing on right now.
He's focusing on right now, but he's not making it about him. That's the big takeaway for me. It wasn't so much, what he said. He didn't want to answer it. And I mean, his record speaks for itself. When you start talking about you're going to be the all-time winningest coach at Massillon, and then the history of the coaches that have come through that building.
It's not just that. He's coached more games at Massillon than anyone else. I mean, there's high expectations there. Usually coaches don't last that long. Your ass is booted.
4 years. It's like a president.
Win or go home.
That's it.
Right? So, hats off to him. Hats off to his staff. They're doing a great job. We're going to move on to the Pac-7 now, talk about that week. Crazy week in the Pac. It was Northwest winning again, staying tied atop the pack, first place, 28-7 win over Triway. Zach Miller for Triway, quarterback is still out, but another strong performance out of Kyler Maraglia, 230 yards on the ground and 4 touchdowns.
It's a little water bug. We did their game against Louisville, and we were kind of like, well, you know, a lot of things that happened in the off season. It's like Rodgers. We got this. Don't panic.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay. And all they've done is ripped off, keep stacking dubs. They're now 6-2 after a slow start. Sophomore quarterback is Badger is starting to settle in.
Yep.
And then when you have him, you know, completing passes and able to move the chains that way, all it's going to do, as you know, is open up the run game for Maraglia. He's had an unbelievable season. He's one of those guys, as I said, he's about 5'7", 5'8", but he's so quick. He's patient. He absorbs contact well, and he always seems to fall forward. He just keeps getting better as the season continues to go on.
Yeah. Canton South beat Tuslaw 49-7. Poochie Snyder 5 more touchdowns. He's impressive. You know, Tuslaw, we talked about it last week. Now they got 2 games left. They got to win one of those to get in the playoffs. Not easy sledding, you know, these next couple games coming up for them. But Canton South, you know, Week 10 showdown coming up. They both got to take care of, Northwest Canton South both got to take care of business this week. But they're both tied first place in the pack in that huge game coming up Week 10.
Yeah, they just can't get caught overlooking who they play this week, which I don't think they are. Coach DeMarco has been coaching for a long time. He's so good at preparing his players for the task at hand. I think that's what they're going to do, and they're going to go into Week 10 on a big high with a lot of confidence.
Yeah. Fairless gets back on track, beating Manchester 40-14. Orville upsets CVCA. Snyder back in that game for CVCA, didn't play the week before in their loss. And Orville still, you know, Orville's one of those teams, it always seems like at the end of the season, you know, they find a way to win some games they shouldn't. They start playing well at the end of the season. So, you know, they shake up some things and knock CVCA back down in the pecking order in the pack. We'll move to the IVC now. Sandy Valley used some grit, sneak by Claymont on the road, 29-26. Malvern lost a wild game at home in 2 overtimes, 48-42 to Newcomerstown. I was really surprised when I've seen that game. You know, coach has done a really great job down there. You know, Malvern, we had them, some of us had them in our power poll top 10 at the beginning of the season. Jared Withrow, the sophomore quarterback's doing a great job down there. You know, so I was a little surprised for that game. You know, the defense got out of whack, but, you know, they've got some games coming up. You know, game this week that's winnable, and then big showdown rivalry, Week 10, Hornets versus Hornets, East Canton and Malvern. And the East Canton Hornets beat Tuskegee Central Catholic 47-14. Nice game by East Canton quarterback Brennan Betts, the junior. You know, so he's been doing a good job. They got a couple different guys that have been playing running back down there, you know, for them. And I'm excited because this week Jeff Tyler and I will be in East Canton for the East Canton Hornets hosting Buckeye Trail. And it's a win and you're in situation for East Canton. Obviously the tougher matchup, you know, Week 10 with Malvern coming up. But this game, you know, if East Canton beats Buckeye Trail, they're in the playoffs. So you can catch that game on our Stark Media Team YouTube channel. Jeff Tyler and I will be there for that. We're going to take a break here, but first I want to talk about Ben Wallenberg's Chocolates. Ben Wallenberg's Gourmet Chocolates and Nuts, located in the Fulton Drugs Plaza, 2520 Harrison Avenue Northwest, across from Stadium Park. I was in there yesterday. The store is stocked. He's got a pecan cashew peanut mix that I absolutely love. I'd go and get some of that. And then he also had some black raspberry dark chocolate creams and orange dark chocolate creams that I had to get for my wife. She really enjoys them. So make sure, you know, you need some snacks for your games. Go down to Ben Wallenberg's. You need holiday orders. You're a business. You need to get some stuff for your employees. You don't know what to do. Call Ben. He'll hook you up. He'll deliver it to your business as well. So check him out down at the Fulton Drugs Plaza. And we'll be right back after this break. thank you again to all of our sponsors. And if you're interested in advertising with Stark Media, send us an email at starkmediateam@gmail.com. Basketball season's coming up. We're going to have 2 games a week for high school basketball on 99.7 FM. So, if you're interested for basketball season, we'll hook you up. We'll give you great deals. We've got great packages to fit any budget. We're going to move on to the Fed. Crazy week in the Federal League. Kind of went how we went, but some closer games than we thought they were going to be. We'll start in a game that had big playoff implications. We talked about it last week. Green beat Perry 38-35, and Green really needed to do that because they've got some games the rest of the season here that, Hoover and Lake, that if they didn't beat Perry, their playoff hopes might have been in trouble a little bit, or definitely in a spot where they wouldn't want to be. So big win for Green, beating Perry. QB Robbie Klockner threw for 385 yards, 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. Perry rallied late, but it wasn't enough. And now Perry's lost 3 of 4 with Lake coming up this week. Jim, what the hell's happened to Perry?
Before we get to Perry, let me talk a little bit about Green.
Okay.
We talk about Robbie Klockner every week and the yards that he puts up and the amount of attempts and the amount of completions and the amount of touchdowns. But let's talk about Antonio Martin. Had over 100 yards rushing this week. First game this season for Green that they've had a 100-yard rusher.
How many times did they run the ball?
I believe maybe 15.
God, that's got to be more than they've run the ball the entire season combined.
For sure, but it was a great win for Green, as you said, Drew. A game that they had to have. They won it at home, but they needed that momentum to go into the last couple games to trying to get into playoffs. But Perry is, as you said, lost 3 of 4, and it's not like they're playing bad football, Drew. I mean, the first loss of the season, they lost to a really good team from Ontario, 26-21. Mm-hmm. They lost to Jackson in overtime on a 2-point conversion, 32-31. That could have gone the other way. Then they lose to Hoover, who outmanned them, 24-14, and then they lose to Green, 38-35. You go back and you look at the tape, you can always look at 5 to 6 plays, which could determine the outcome another way, but they just haven't been able to get it done. They're still playing good football, but now they got to go and play Lake at home. Lake's playing extremely well. They're 7-1. They're looking to be co-Federal League champs. McKinley also has 1 loss. Lake's only loss on the season was against Cam McKinley. Talk about crazy stuff going on in the Federal League. Every week it's a crapshoot. You don't know how those dice are going to turn up. Perry is at home, or they are at home this week, which does help. Really like the Purge Foghorn on defense. I think that's cool. It's a great atmosphere. There's going to be a lot of people. Going to be excited. Lake will travel well because, as I said, they are 7-1. But they're going to have to play flawless football and not turn the ball over this week.
Yeah, and the key thing for Perry is just the defense. I mean, it's like they do things right for like 10 or 12 plays, and then they give up a big play. You know what I mean? So they've got to eliminate big plays on that Perry defense if they want to put themselves in a position now for the playoffs. I mean, here's the thing. We talked to Coach Slates earlier in the season. We said, hey, you want to get Massillon back on the schedule? He said, if we play him, it's going to be in the playoffs. I'll tell you what, if Perry drops these next 2 games to Lake and to Glen Oak, they will be playing Massillon possibly in week 1 of the playoffs. And I mean, I think we'd all enjoy that, but I think they'd rather play someone else, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens there. We'll move on to the Glen Oak Eagles. They beat Louisville 48-13. Avante Burt for the Golden Eagles ran for 220 yards and 2 touchdowns and only 16 carries. So Glen Oak in Region 1, obviously almost every team gets in the playoffs, but they kind of helped their cause for seeding. They're not going to have to go play somebody, right out the gate, a 1, 2, or 3 seed. So Glen Oak has put themselves in a good position for the playoffs coming up. But Louisville, now we talked about it last week. This is a game they needed, not just for reasons, we talked about Coach Davis on the hot seat, but they had an opportunity to get in the playoffs. And that was a winnable game, I thought, for Louisville, and they get blown out. So now, they're on the outside looking in for the playoffs. Got a winnable game this week against Notre Dame Cathedral Latin, whose record isn't great, but Coach Andrew Mooney does a great job up there. They play a tough schedule. And then Louisville ends the year with Lindsley, West Virginia, who's a really good team.
Right, and the thing that surprised me is which Glen Oak team's going to show up.
Yeah.
TJ Downing and I and Mark Milano did the Glen Oak Jackson game, not this past week, but the week before, and they absolutely got boat raced. I mean, they came out, Jackson was up 31-0 before they knew what planet they were on. It was a running clock in the second half, and the ball game was over. So it's like, okay, then they played Louisville, and Louisville's been up and down. They had a good win against Northwest. I mean, think about that. When we watched Louisville beat Northwest, where Northwest was at, where we thought Louisville could go, and it's been the opposite of what we thought.
And I think, Louisville, we talked about earlier in the season about the defense being good, and they were healthier. I know Shane Gates, a big guy.
They're physical.
He was good up front. I'm not sure if he's back. I know he was banged up for a while. But when your offense struggles this much, it puts your defense in bad positions. So we talked about that Louisville defense, being good. But when you get put on a short field, that's tough. A great example of that is this past week I had an opportunity to do the Walsh University game. Okay. They lose 35-0 to Ashland, but Coach Mark Johnston, their defensive coordinator, his defense played outstanding against the number 6 team in the country. Walsh turned the ball over 2 times inside their own 5-yard line, which Ashland ended up scoring. Then fumbled the ball in the end zone where Ashland scored, and got a blocked punt for a touchdown. So,
that's 4 scores.
That's 4 scores. That's 28 points out of 35. They gave up 7 legitimate points. So that's an example of how your offense can put your defense in bad spots.
And that's been the problem in the Achilles heel for Louisville this year. They've been prone to turnovers and putting their defense in a tough position, and the defense just hasn't been able to bail them out. But Davion Cruz is hurt, I believe.
He was a little banged up. They've got the senior in there at quarterback now, Roberts, and he's done some nice things. And I think Louisville's trying to work through some things on offense, but like we said, I mean it's a must win for them this week, just for where that program's at. NDCL is a winnable game, and then they finish the season with Lindsley. So we'll see what happens there. Jim, you and TJ were at the Jackson-McKinley game last week. McKinley continues to roll 40-23 winners over the Polar Bears.
It was impressive what they did. Nino Hill had another monster game. You talked about how good he was, Drew, and the comparison to him and Sibley, and you said this is the best one that you've seen. So I couldn't,
as a sophomore,
I couldn't wait to see it live, and he was as good as advertised. You talked about how patient he is as a runner, beyond his years that way, because so many times when you have a young back, they get him in the backfield and they just try to hit the hole as fast as they can. Well, as much as McKinley runs the GT scheme and the wham block with the H back, or what do you call it, Fox?
Well, yeah, the Fox is when you've also got the puller and the fullback. That's how I call it. But yeah, you can just run a wham with the fullback. Yeah.
Either way, his ability to slow down and let the play develop, whoever's pulling, whether it is the H-back, guard, tackle, all of them. He was so patient. He would let the guys get into the box, and then he would make one cut. He was so impressive to watch run north and south. So many young backs also like to try to go side to side, especially when they're fast, but he's not that guy. He's a 1 foot in the ground, north and south, and then he could jump cut. I mean, there isn't anything that kid doesn't have in his bag, and he's only a sophomore. He was really fun to watch. McKinley's defense created some turnovers. They had an interception, pick 6 in the first half. They also had a strip sack fumble in the second half for a touchdown. It was impressive to see, as we talked about, the young freshman, Lucas Eckerman, what he did when he came in. We talked about him. Davide played well. They've got guys that on offense that can make plays. I think that you're going to see the playbook open up a little bit. There were a couple throws in that game that Lucas made that was kind of like, whew. There was one time where they ran a seam route and they ran a square in behind it. I mean, he stepped up and, he ripped it. The question is, Anthony Fuline went out with a concussion. Not sure on his status
He's one
for
of their
this
better
week.
defensive backs.
Better defensive
Receivers.
backs and wide receivers. So we're not sure on his availability this week. But Jackson has a big one at Kansas Country Catholic, as we talked about, and McKinley is playing extremely well. They've ripped off 4 in a row now, I believe.
Mhm.
4 wins
Yep.
in a row after losing the first 4 games. So McKinley's stock obviously rising. We can't overlook this week, of course. Going into next week, we know this place out in front of us is going to have parades and everything else with all the kids and the excitement of the McKinley Massillon ball game. They just need to take care of business this week, clinch at least a tie for the Federal League title, and then go into Massillon next week on a high with a lot of confidence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a big win for McKinley again over Jackson. And they're continuing to roll. And you talk about Nino Hill. One of the things that impresses me about him and about backs at the high school level, when I watch a back and I see a good back, I look for guys that play between the hashes on those long runs, because they know those are guys that are making defensive backs tackle them. It's easy to, once you get in space, to try to get to the sideline
Or outrun them.
and try to outrun them to the corner. But
Sure.
those guys that eventually, just play in between the hashes and get north and south are become so much better backs, because they have to do a variety of different things, to miss those tackles. And it makes them such a bigger threat to a defense. It's easier. Defenses, you practice a pursuit drill, and they're all running to the sideline to get to the guy. It's a lot tougher to catch a guy from behind when he's running straight through your defense and is taking an angle to run to the sideline. So he does a great job at that.
One more thing on that ball game. Nice ball game by Keaton Rohde.
Mm-hmm.
Made a lot of good decisions with the ball. Hurt him with his legs. Rushed for almost 90 yards, which, when he rushes for 90, Nino's got, eight straight 100-yard games, I believe now. So when you put those two together, and Keaton's ability to get the ball down the field, he had a nice deep pass for a touchdown to stretch out the defense. They played well on offense. Keaton was a big part of that, opening up the defense even more because of the things that he did not just with his arm, but also making good decisions with his legs. So he needed to be accounted for, which left one less guy on Hill.
Mm-hmm. So for Glen Oak this week against McKinley, you'd already talked about that Jackson Central matchup. I think for Glen Oak this week, you're going to have to come out and you're going to have to play some man-to-man and match those receivers up and try to stop McKinley running off tackle. But then the biggest key for Glen Oak is control your emotions. It's been well documented, the stuff that's happened over the past year, 2 years with McKinley and Glen Oak. Some bad blood there. Tensions are going to run high. If Glen Oak wants to even have a chance at this game, they've got to control their emotions.
And then if it does start to get out, the officials need to do a great job from jump. Mm-hmm. Talking to the captains and the head coach, it's like, listen, if we have one punch thrown early, we're firing flags. We're not tolerating it, and kids are going to be gone. They need to establish that from the beginning so that none of this gets out of hand, and hopefully that it doesn't.
Yeah. Jeff Tyler and myself were over at Memorial Stadium in North Canton this past week. Lake beat Hoover 35-15. And really the story of that game was Lake's defense. Sacks, turnovers, tackles for loss. They're making a ton of big plays. Joey Garrow on defense, Evan Brady on defense, Dane Jarvis on defense. Christopher. They're all played.
Will Butler.
Yeah, Will Butler. They all played great games on defense for Lake. Will Butler had 3. Him and Cale Jarvis went back to splitting some time again. Will Butler had 3 rushing touchdowns. Cale Jarvis completed some nice passes and some tight windows on some balls that could have been picked, but he got them in there. And then for Hoover, Carson Derlin can't do it himself. Mason Ashby struggled in this game. He fumbled the ball 3 times, uncharacteristic of him. We talked about how important he is to this Hoover Viking team. And then Luke Roach, was coming into the game with an ankle that was bothering him. About second quarter, late second quarter, he turned that ankle again. Wasn't same the rest of the game, so they're going to need to get him healthy this week for that showdown with Green, which you and TJ will be on for 99.7 FM. So Green and Hoover. That's going to do it for all of our recaps for this week. Make sure you follow us on social media. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Subscribe to the YouTube page. It's free. Make sure you like this video. We appreciate all of our sponsors. And then just again for everyone, so you know where we're going to be this week, it will be Sam Berkwin and Jeff Shreve at the Central Catholic vs. Jackson game on Rock 106.9 and the iHeartMedia app. It will be you and TJ and Mark Milano at North Canton for that Green Hoover game. And Jeff Tyler and myself will be out at East Canton for a must-win win, and you're in the playoffs game for the East Canton Hornets as they take on Buckeye Trail. Good luck to all the teams and all the coaches and players this week. Stay healthy. Have a great week.
The Stark Media Injury Report, brought to you on 99.7 FM and streaming live all over the world on the free iHeartRadio app. Sponsored by our friends at the Leathernecks Nation MC Ma Deuce chapter in Canton, Ohio, where veterans helping veterans is their main mission. The Ma Deuce chapter supports local veteran charities in and around Stark County, like the Save 22 organization fighting veteran suicides and the Sam Center in Massillon. They cannot do it alone, though, so stop out on October 15th and support them at their annual Halloween party located at the VFW on Mahoning Road in Canton from 3 to 9. All the details, including food, drinks, raffle items, and live music, is on their Facebook page at Leathernecks Nation MC Ma Deuce Chapter, or their website at www.madeucelnmc.com. That's Ma Deuce, Lima November Mike Charlie.com. All are welcome. Donations accepted at the door, and a large portion of these proceeds goes to helping these local charities. Semper Fi, and they look forward to your support. Raffle tickets, only $10 a piece. Come out and celebrate Halloween like the Leathernecks Nation MC Ma Deuce chapter does right here in Canton, Ohio, and support your veterans.